Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're new, I'm Periwinkle Jellyfish, and I'm a silly little person that draws silly little characters. Today I'm going to be designing 2 new characters, and at the end of the video you can decide in the comments section which one you want to see me draw Dreamscape for next episode. Did I just say Dreamcake? Dreamscape, not Dreamcake. Anyway, whichever character seems to be getting the most support and seems to be voted for the most, I will pick them for the Dreamscape video in hopefully next week. Okay, let's move on to describing this first character that we're making. So, for this character, I decided that I wanted to change up how I draw things a little bit, or not really. I wanted to experiment with a different type of character than I usually draw. That's what I meant. So for this character, I want her to be a little bit more closed off and cold, and I wanted her to have a bit more of a gothic color scheme and style, because all of my other characters are very colorful and bright and fun, and while there's nothing wrong with that, and I absolutely love that, I thought it would be fun to swap things up a little bit and see what I can do with a more dark color tone and a more gothic theme. I decided to give this character a parasol because I love characters with parasols, and I thought it would be really fun to mess around with one. In this video, I messed around a lot with just characters interacting with their own props and little things that they have, and you'll see what I mean in the next time lapse. Okay, I'm giving this character a really big hat. I think it's called a fedora. I'm very bad with names of just about everything, so yeah. This hat may be Fedora. Fedora has lace, and so do the sleeves. And I'm having this dress be very long and elegant, and I imagine that she speaks in a very regal voice and is very refined and would absolutely never use slang. That is for the peasants. If she lives in a Victorian era, then she probably is very high-ranking and a noble, and she seems like she would just have a lot of accessories and be very fashionable, but she has opinions on what she thinks looks good on her, like, oh, I simply cannot wear pink, darling. That looks horrible on me, if you get what I mean. That's what I meant. In my designs, I can never tell if I've added enough details, if I've added too many, if my design is boring, if my design is too much. And it's a really fine line to walk, and I feel like any other person who designs characters can sympathize with this, because you want your characters to stand out and be unique and have things that make them stand out from all the other characters out there. But at the same time, you don't want to have too many little details, because then it'll be a pain to draw them every single time you're drawing your character. And that's always really fun to deal with. Okay, so I was struggling with that thought a lot while I was designing this character, Fedora, maybe I'll call her, I don't know. Let me know what you think of that in the comments, or if you have something that's even better for her. Anyway, in my art style, I've decided to simplify the hands a little bit. I mean, everything in my art style is pretty simplified and just focusing on cuteness. Personally, I'd recommend to any fellow fledgling artist, if there are things in your art style or something that you want to improve on or just can't seem to get right, try simplifying it or finding a unique way to yourself that you find easier. For example, the hands that I draw, they just tend to be more cartoony, if that makes sense, and less realistic. It takes a lot of pressure off of it, and I find that I actually like the result, and it feels pretty cohesive with the rest of my style. So I feel like for hands and hair and eyes, they don't have to be perfect and like an anime art style. Every artist is different, and yeah. Personally, I feel like simplified art styles and things that are more cutesy and sweet just personally suit me better, but I like to add a good amount of details as well, just because I think it's fun. So you can see now how the hands are a little bit more simplified and taking a lot of the pressure off of it. Personally, I think this has been working out pretty well, so I think I'm going to continue working on this way of drawing hands in the future. I think the noodle arms and just cartoony hand seems to work pretty well, and I'm really happy with it. Yeah. So I'm moving on to the lace in her line art, and now we can work on that beautiful parasol. One thing about me is that I have fairly shaky hands, and ever since I was little, I physically can't get myself to draw a straight line no matter how hard I try. But I refuse to use rulers because it just seems like an extra step, I guess. So I'm just, trying to embrace the wavy lines and deal with it, I guess. I'm altering the eyes a little bit and trying to adjust them to add a little bit of positioning, if that makes sense. Then I was double checking to make sure that we got everything right and in the line art and no details were missed, and now we can move on to coloring. Now that you can see this girlie's color palette, I feel like you might be getting the vibe that she's a little bit of like a villain in disguise, or maybe like a twist villain, but I really don't think she would be evil or anything like that. She seems more just reserved and a little bit tricky to warm up to. But I feel like she's actually a very sweet person and actually a big softie if you can get her to warm up to you. I imagine that she loves animals and just likes to spend a lot of time by herself. I'm giving her a nice red velvet dress because I thought it would be very fashionable. And I added a little bit of a gradient to it. I had to experiment with the colors a little bit. Now I'm adding a bit of a blue layer to the lower part of the dress, and add a little bit of a gradient there as well. And now we can work on that beautiful gemstone necklace that we're giving her. I had to fix a few mistakes around the hair and everything like that. And I decided all the gems will just be a simple, sweet purple. And I did a little bit of shading on them to add a little bit of dimension and depth. So I am just doing that really quick. It was a very easy process. I lowered the opacity on the gemstones, and then I just altered the really big gemstone. Kind of reminds me of Rarity from My Little Pony, the one in the middle. I decided to make the hat fedora, I'm just embracing it now, have the exact same color as her dress because I thought some cohesiveness would work really well for her. I decided to add some blue lace to her hat and the rest of her outfit. The bucket tool was generally helpful. I just had to color in a few of the little mistakes. So I decided to make the gloves the same color as the lace and the shoes the same color as the little golden thingies in between the parts of the necklace. Now I'm coloring in her skin, and I'm just finishing that up real quick, fixing a few little mistakes, and now we can move on to the eyes. I considered giving her red-colored eyes, but I felt like that made her seem like a villain, and I didn't want her to have that vibe. I wanted her to seem mysterious and maybe a little bit cold and closed off, but she's actually a good person, and she's quite sweet once you get to know her. So instead, I decided to go for blue eyes to kind of hint that she's not too bad of a person. You need to warm up to her a little bit. Once I was done with that, I colored in the lashes of the eyes, had to get the other one too, and then we could move on to what's next. We're gonna do the parasol next. Am I correct? Did I remember correctly? Yes. There it is. Okay, so I decided to make the parasol match with the rest of her dress as well because I feel like she would love a color palette that's very cohesive and works together nicely. Probably her entire outfit comes from a set. And I tried to make all the colors work together quite nicely, and once I was done with that, I decided to try adding a little bit of shading to the underneath of her hat to kind of add a little bit more of a mysterious vibe. This is a fairly simple thing. I just added a deepish purple, and then I colored around it and made the layer go to multiply, adjusted the opacity a little bit, and there we go. So once we're done with that, we can move on to rendering. It's only until I get to the rendering part of my process that I notice all the little mistakes in the layers and I have to work around them. That's always fun. So now I'm working on the hair, and I wanted to make it purple and blue for the line art. This is very quick, and now I can move on to the parasol. I'm trying to make it match with the rest of her outfit, and now I'm experimenting a little bit with the eyes and what to color them in. And now, here are some little doodles that I did of her off camera. Yeah, that's all. Here's the finished character, and I'm really happy with how she turned out. Now let's move on to our next character. I thought it would be really fun to draw a character that thrives off of chaos. So I decided to mess around with that, and I mentioned earlier that I was playing around with giving characters props, and I think you can see why now. I gave her a huge hammer. I was experimenting a little bit with the hands. I struggled with that a little bit and had to work for a little while to figure out how to get it just right. I mentioned before that I simplified the hands a little bit, so I just decided to go for something really simple and just not overcomplicate things. I imagine that this character she likes to break things for fun, probably enjoys going to rage rooms, and that hammer is probably her best friend. I just feel like she would love to just destroy things and break stuff, but she would never actually hurt anybody, or if something's very, very precious to you, like, I don't know, a vase that you really, really like, that's priceless, she wouldn't break it, and if it belongs to you, she'd ask permission if she can smash something first. And of course, I don't feel like she would hurt anyone with her hammer unless she was acting in self-defense. So now I'm working on her eyes, and I decided to give her a bit of an energetic look. I imagine that she, as I mentioned before, thrives off of chaos, and personally, I like a little bit of chaos too. I consider my art style controlled chaos, if that makes sense. I'm giving her long flowing hair that's kind of like moving and in motion, so that it looks like she just finished smashing something, and she's kind of like in motion. I just said that. Oh my goodness. I usually don't draw bangs because it's a little bit hard, but I just haven't practiced it very much, so I'm trying to get better at that. I gave her some pigtails because I thought it would be really cute. And now I am moving on to her clothes. The clothes gave me a lot of trouble because I wanted to give her something that kind of promotes the idea that she's chaotic and likes to break things, but I couldn't tell how to really convey that very well. My first thought was to give her a sweater and then some bracelets, a pocket, and a bag, probably full of a bunch of stuff that, like, explosives or something, I don't know. The thread on her pocket is coming undone. She probably played with scissors and did that on purpose. She has shoes, sneakers. I didn't give her heels because I figured if she's running around all day, it's going to be very hard to run around in stilettos or something. I have just a good old match, a lighter, hanging right out of her pocket because, I don't know, I feel like she would like that. I decided to make her sweater have a little bit of torn bits of it. I imagine that she probably likes to play around with scissors and cut things, and maybe when she's bored, she decides to give her outfit a few revisions. Let's see, what am I doing now? I am adjusting the thing a little bit. I remember at one point I did a little bit of alterations to her outfit off camera, but it's not too big. I mainly just experimented with the color palette a little bit, and that's about it. Now, once I'm satisfied with her design, I can move on to what's next. Giving her some fishnets because I thought that would be fun. Off camera, I made the fishnets a little bit torn up because I thought that would kind of convey the chaos of her a little bit more. And now we're moving on to the line art. To me, this character seems like a mix of Louise Belcher from Bob's Burgers, Sparkle from Honkai Star Rail, and Bernice from Zenless Zone Zero. All of them tend to thrive on chaos, and I feel like this character would probably get along really well with all of those people. And they all have pigtails, so woo! Pigtail buddies. Okay. I'm just doing the line art, getting the skin done first. I am now working on her ear, and now we're moving on to the hair. I'm trying to make the hair line art a little bit more detailed lately, so I've been experimenting with that a little bit, sometimes off camera. So I think if you take a close look, you can kind of notice that the minor alterations I did, and how there's a little bit more strands in there. with how much was going on in this drawing, sometimes I got confused and thought, wait, what is going on there? Wait, what's happening? And I had to just like flip in between the rough sketch and the line art to figure out what's going on, and sometimes it took me a few minutes to realize what was happening. I got the clothes and the hammer mixed up, and that was just fun to deal with. I thought that having her sweater partially be hanging off of one shoulder would be fun and a good thing for her design. It just makes her look a little bit unique. And so, yeah. Now I'm adding her shirt and her shorts and the ripped parts of her fishnet. And now we can move on to the shoes. So now I am just quickly trying to get that done real quick. Playing around with the fishnets was actually pretty fun. So on one leg we have a shoe and fishnets, and on the other one we just have a shoe and socks and an anklet. Now I'm coloring in the eyes. I feel like she would be very happy whenever she's breaking stuff because it's probably really fun to her. I don't see why she would dislike it. I'm adding some rings onto her fingers because I thought it would be fun to play around with those. And now I'm adding that slightly coming undone pocket and the lighter that's just hanging straight out of it. Now I'm making the hammer, and after this we can move on to coloring in a moment. As you can see, the line art is starting to get to the finishing points. I'm double checking to make sure that we don't have any mistakes. I felt like something was off in the line art, so I had to adjust that a little bit and notice a few things that I forgot. I wanted her color palette to be a bit chaotic because I felt like if things are just have high contrast or don't work together or seem to be working together oddly, then that would just perfectly match with her personality. So I decided that, she should probably just be chaotic in both personality and color palette. So we have pink and green for the hair, which are colors that are complete opposites, so they kind of work together pretty well. And I sped up this part of the process a good amount because it's hard to narrate this. I did a little bit of red streaks to her hair because I thought it could make things pop a little bit. And I'm adding a few extra green streaks. I was just kind of moving around and playing with the greenness. I wanted the main color to be green, some pops of pink, and then a little bit of red. Once I was done with that, I could move on to coloring in the bag. I used the bucket tool to get the bag done really quickly, and then I moved on to the rest of the outfit. So I decided that her sweater should have like a fiery gradient to it because I imagine she likes setting stuff on fire for fun. I imagine that she probably like makes little mini campfires in her backyard because she likes watching things burn. I don't know. She's a very chaotic character. I'm adding a nice pink color to her top, and then I'm adding some jeans. I wanted her color palette to primarily be warm colors, with the only exception being the purples and the jeans. So now I'm moving on to coloring in the shoes. I was doing this really, really quickly and trying to just add as many colors as I possibly could. Now we are moving on to coloring in the hammer. So I decided to make the stem holdy stick part. I forgot what it's called. Yellow. The primary part of it be pink, and then some of it be green. Now moving on to coloring in her skin, and once I'm done with that, I can move on to coloring in, you guessed it, the eyes. Woo! So I'm getting that done really quickly, getting the white part of the eyes. I always forget what they're called. One day I will look it up and figure out what the actual term for it. I gave her pink eyes, and then a little bit of a fiery-ish gradient to it. And I colored in the lashes of the eyes, realized I forgot a little bit of the hairpin, and now we can move on to rendering. So I was coloring around the fishnets, trying to be really careful with it, and now I'm adjusting a bunch of little itty-bitty details. We're coloring in the lighter, and trying to make everything pop. I decided to try giving her eyeshadow, if that makes sense, so There's a little bit of a gradient to the edge of her eyes, and then below that I have a little bit of a red airbrush thing going on there. And here we go. This is the finished product. Here are some little doodles I did of her off camera, and I'm really happy with how she turned out. She seems like just the perfect chaotic character. Both these characters need names, so if you have any idea for them, please let me know in the comments below. And please let me know which one you would like to see me draw a dreamscape for. I believe that's all, so I will see you again next video. Bye!